Imagine the dead of night in a quiet farming village in Iraq. The year is 2003. Suddenly, the power shuts off across the entire town. The stars above are the only light left, and shadows creep across rooftops as hundreds of US soldiers move silently from house to house. They're searching, not just for anyone, but for the most wanted man in the world at that moment. Beneath a simple farmhouse, hidden under a styrofoam-covered hole in the ground, a bearded man waits silently in the dark. Then, movement. A rope is tugged. A soldier spots the trapdoor, and just as a grenade is about to be tossed inside, a pair of hands rises up. A calm voice follows. "My name is Saddam Hussein. I am the president of Iraq, and I want to negotiate." And just like that, ladies and gentlemen, we got him. That iconic line is the one most people remember. The meme, the grainy video, the man emerging from the dirt like a ghost of the past. But the real story of how the United States actually found Saddam Hussein is way more complicated and way more surprising. When the US launched the invasion of Iraq in March 2003, the goal was to take down Saddam's regime. The official reason? Weapons of mass destruction. It was the rallying cry used to justify war. There is no doubt, one high-ranking official said on national TV, that Saddam Hussein now has weapons of mass destruction. But as the dust settled in Iraq and American troops took control of Baghdad in a matter of weeks, no WMDs were found. Not one. That's when the mood started to shift. A quiet but undeniable sinking feeling crept in across military and political circles. The mission, which had moved at lightning speed in the beginning, was suddenly running into an uncomfortable truth. The entire reason for going in didn't hold up. The invasion had been framed as a response to an urgent threat: Saddam Hussein's alleged stockpile of weapons of mass destruction. What was meant to be a quick sweep, a toppling of a dictator followed by swift stabilization, quickly morphed into something else entirely. A long, bloody, and complicated entanglement with no clear finish line. And Saddam? The man at the center of it all, the face of fear for so many Iraqis, the ruthless leader whose name had been chanted at rallies and burned into the minds of an entire generation, had completely vanished. No sightings, no communications. In the heart of Baghdad, American forces helped Iraqis pull down a massive statue of Saddam Hussein. The footage of that moment, ropes tightening, the metal giant crashing to the ground, went viral across the globe. It felt like a victory, a final punctuation mark on the fall of a brutal regime. But it was only symbolic. The statue fell, sure, but the man himself was still out there, hiding, watching, a loose end that no one could afford to ignore. In an effort to keep the hunt alive and in the public eye, the US military released a deck of playing cards. It was a creative way to humanize the manhunt and keep soldiers sharp. Everyone in the field was told, if you spot a card, you chase it down. But for months, nothing changed. Saddam remained a ghost. No one seemed willing to talk. Rumors floated, sure, but none ever turned into solid leads. That is, until a man in Mosul walked into a US military base with a bombshell tip. He claimed Saddam's two sons, Uday and Qusay, were hiding in his very own house. The military didn't hesitate. A strike team was scrambled and deployed fast. And when they surrounded the house, the informant's story held true. The US soldiers responded. A standoff dragged on for hours, and at one point, missiles were even launched into the house. The walls crumbled, and eventually silence fell. On one hand, two of the regime's most dangerous figures were gone. The next layer scouted ahead when he traveled. And the innermost circle, the Hamaya. Those were the elite guards who stayed by his side at all times, loyal to the end. Maddox figured that if Saddam was still alive, it wasn't the old regime keeping him safe. It was the Hamaya. He began tracking leads in Saddam's hometown of Tikrit. Many people believed Saddam had already moved far away. But Tikrit was still home to the al-Muslit family, a name that kept coming up during interrogations. One man stood out: Muhammad Ibrahim Omar al-Muslit, a former bodyguard who was now rumored to be running the resistance against the US occupation. If anyone knew where Saddam was, it had to be him. Maddox didn't get to Muhammad right away. Instead, he pieced together a chain of names. A nephew gave up some business partners. One of them had a driver. That driver mentioned Muhammad's son, who casually shared that his dad used to take him fishing at a pond near Samarra. That's the lead that turned everything. Maddox remembered that a previous housekeeper had said Saddam loved fish, specifically mazgoof, an Iraqi grilled fish dish. It wasn't much, but in a sea of failed raids and half-truths, it was a direction. Eventually, the team raided a fish farm. No Muhammad, but one of the fishermen turned out to be connected to a resistance leader. He mentioned an uncle with a house in Baghdad. Weak lead? Maybe, but Maddox went with it. The apartment was raided, and somehow, against all odds, the man they'd been chasing for months, Muhammad Ibrahim, was there. Caught. Now came the hard part. Would he talk? Maddox offered protection for him and his family, and it worked. Muhammad opened up and pointed the team to a quiet village near the Tigris River. He didn't tell them exactly where Saddam was, but he nudged them. When the soldiers arrived in the village, they searched 2 farmhouses. Nothing. They were just about to give up when Muhammad subtly guided them toward a small shack north of the second building. A rope was sticking out of the dirt. He didn't say it aloud, but he didn't have to. A trap door was found, and beneath it, a dirt-covered man hiding in a spider hole no more than 6 feet deep. When he emerged, disheveled and bearded, he said the words that would go down in history. The image of Saddam's capture was carefully curated. Reporters were invited to tour the hole. Photos of Saddam's dental exam were released to the public, showing a broken, humble dictator who once ruled with an iron fist now getting his teeth checked. His fall wasn't just strategic, it was psychological. The US needed the world to see his defeat. But here's the thing. Even after Saddam's capture, the war didn't end. Iraq was unstable, leaderless, and wounded. The US had no exit strategy. Sectarian violence flared. Years of conflict followed. The myth of Saddam was shattered, but the wounds of his rule and the war that followed ran deep. And what's fascinating about this story is not just the operation itself, but the narrative it created. The idea of Saddam, the tyrant hiding in a hole, became a meme, yes, but also a symbol. A reminder of how power can crumble, and how even the most elaborate regimes can fall not just to military might, but to a rope sticking out of the ground. In the end, this wasn't just a story about capturing a dictator. It was about intelligence, persistence, psychological warfare, and a bit of luck. But it's also about how narratives are crafted, about how images like the spider hole, the dental exam, and the ace of spades card can say as much as words. Because sometimes, the most powerful moments in history don't come from grand speeches or explosive battles, but from a pair of trembling hands rising from the dirt. Thanks for watching. Please like the video, press the subscribe button, and also drop your thoughts in the comment section.